Alright guys, hi, this is your video. I'm going to try to make this as fast as possible. Alright, first example we're doing a subtraction. We're going to do 2/3 minus 5/12. And as you can tell, we don't have a common denominator, so we're going to use ratio tables to help us find that common denominator. Okay, so we're going to do ratio table for the 2/3. Okay, so we're going to do this, and we're setting up our ratio table times 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5. Okay, then we're also going to do a ratio table for 5/12. Okay, and again, just set up your ratio table. I may not need all these. Okay, alright, so let's do times 1 times 2 again. Alright, so let's start with 2/3. We're going to take our numerator, the 2, multiply it to 1, and that's 2. Our denominator times 1 is 3. Okay, numerator 2 times 2, that's 4. 3 times 2, that's 6. 2 times 3, that's 6, and 3 times 3, that's 9. 2 times 4, that's 8, and 3 times 4, that's 12. Okay, and then 2 times 5 is 10, and 3 times 5 is 15. Okay, alright, so now let's go to the 5/12. 5 times 1, that's 5. 12 times 1, that's 12. 5 times 2, that's 10. 12 times 2, that's 24. Okay, and actually I don't even need to go on, right, because here I have this denominator is 12, and here is the 12, right? So my very first denominator, when I multiplied by 1, already gave me my common denominator, right? So that's the one I want to use. I want to use the least common denominator, the LCD. Okay, and LCD is the 12. Okay, alright, so that's the one I'm using. I'm using 8/12 and 5/12. Now, since I have a common denominator, I can actually subtract them. Okay, so 2/3, we're going to use the equivalent fraction of 8/12, and then we're subtracting 5/12. That one didn't change. Okay, so then you get 8 take away 5, that's 3, and then your denominator stays the same. That's 12. 3 out of 12. And now, like I've told you before, anytime our answer is a fraction, like 3/12, we need to take that very last step, which is to simplify. So I have 3/12. So in order to simplify now, I need to do my factors of 3 and factors of 12. Okay, so factors of 3 are just 1 and 3. For 12, 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. And here we can tell that the greatest common factor is 3. So that's what I'm going to divide by. Divide by 3, and the denominator gets divided by 3 also. Okay, so that gives us 1/4. Okay, and that is our answer for this one. Okay, alright, now let's try one of those mixed number questions. Okay, so for the mixed number, we're gonna have, let's do 4 and 1/10, and we're gonna add 6 and a half to it. Okay, so remember what I told you guys earlier. We could keep it this way, or we can turn them back to improper fractions by following our Texas thing. Okay, and we have to do it to both of them on this one, because both of them are mixed numbers. Okay, so the way this strategy works is we multiply first, then we add. So we do 10 times 4, that's 40, plus 1, that's 41. Okay, and then our denominator stays the same. It's still 10. Plus, then we do the same thing to the 6 1/2. Do 2 times 6, that's 12, plus 1, that's 13. 13 halves. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to do our ratio table with these fractions now. Okay, and so we're going to do 41 tenths. Okay. Alright, and we're going to do times 1, times 2, times 3, times 4, and hopefully I don't have to go anymore. And then 13 halves. Okay, we're going to do again times 1, times 2, times 3, times 4, maybe times 5, I don't know. Remember, we stop when we find the least common denominator. Okay, so once my denominator appears on both of the tables, that's where I stop. Okay, the very first one. Okay, so let's see. We know that 41 times 1 is 41, and 10 times 1 is 10. 41 times 2, that's going to give me 82. And then 10 times 2 is 20. And since my denominators are already getting really big, I'm just going to go on and do the ratio table for this one, for the 13 halves. Okay, so 13 times 1 is 13, 2 times 1 is 2. 13 times 1 is 26, and 2 times 2 is 4. 13 times 3 is 39, and 2 times 3 is 6. And then 13 times 4 is going to give me, let's see, what is it, 52? Yes. Okay, and then 2 times 4 is 8. Okay, and then I am going to do 13 times 5, and that's going to give me 65. And then 2 times 5, that is 10. And if you notice, here we go. Here's 10 as a denominator, and here's 10. I can stop now. Okay, so this is the one, this is the equivalent fractions that I'm going to use. Okay, I'm ready to go because my denominators are the same, so I can actually add them now. So I get 41 tenths. That one just stayed the same, and then 65 tenths. I'm going to add it. Okay, and now I add that up. 41 plus 65, that gives me 106. And the 10 is our denominator still. Now if you notice, that's an improper fraction. So I need to divide in order to change that back to a mixed number. So 106 divided by 10. Okay, 106 divided by 10. We know it won't go into 1, but it'll go into 10 one time. And then I'm going to bring my 6 down, and no way does 10 go into 6. So then that means I'm going to have a remainder of 6. Okay, so remember that answer, 10, is now your whole number. Your remainder is 6. That's your new numerator. And the 10, which was your denominator, stays the same. Okay, now the very, very, very last step is simplify that fraction, that 6 tenths. Okay, so my very last step, anytime my answer is a fraction, we have to do that very last step. Okay, so factors for 6 in order to simplify, and factors for 10. Okay, 1 times 6 gives me 6, 2 times 3 also. For 10, 1 times 10, and 2 times 5. And here we can see that my greatest common factor is that 2. So I'm going to divide by 2. And so 6 divided by 2 is going to give me 3. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. and then I have this whole number. Don't forget to bring it over here. So there's my simplified answer, the 10 3/5. I know that's a lot of steps, guys. I promise you'll love multiplying when we get to it, because it won't be so much. But these are the steps we have to take to find that common denominator. Remember, we can't add them and we can't subtract them without a common denominator. We won't need common denominators for multiplying or dividing anymore. All right, well, that is it. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will try to answer those for you tomorrow. Have a good evening.